boys, children of all ages. Welcome to Robert Sports Show. I'm your host, Robert. NCAA Week 9. Alright, Week 8, I was 27-7 straight up picks. I was 17-17 against the spread. And 19-15 on the over-under. Gives me a year-to-date total of 151-49 win-loss, 93-114 against the spread, 107-100 in the over-under. Alright, Week 9, we have 31 games we are covering. First off, we have the 7-0 South Florida Bulls versus the 6-1 Houston Cougars. Houston is favored by 7.5 at home. I am giving a 7.5 to the South Florida Bulls. I got them winning. I got Houston covering at 7.5, and then I'm taking under on the 72.5. Next, we have the 6-1 Cincinnati Bearcats versus the 3-4 SMU Mustangs. Bearcats are favored by 8.5 on the road. I have them winning, covering, and over on 54.5. Next, we have the 7-0 Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the 2-5 Navy Midshipmen. The Fighting Irish are favored by 23.5 at home. I have the Fighting Irish going 8-0, Navy covering at 23.5, and over on the 54.5. Next, we have what should be a huge matchup out of the ACC, but Florida State's a little down right now, so it's really not as big as it should be. We have the 7-0 Clemson Tigers versus the 4-3 Florida State Seminoles. Now, in games like this, Florida State can cause a huge upset and a huge ripple effect when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to the ACC. I don't think that is going to happen. Clemson is favored by 16 on the road. I do have them winning, covering, and over on the 51. Next, we have the battle of 5-2 teams of the ACC. We have the Miami Hurricanes and the Boston College Eagles. Hurricanes favored by 3.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 51.5. Next, we have the battle of 2 5-win teams. Also, we have the NC State Wolfpack 5-1 versus the 5-2 Syracuse Orange. Some sites this was a pick 'em. I did see this one line of the Wolfpack -2. I am picking the Wolfpack to win, covering the 2 and under on the 63.5. Next, we have a battle for first place in the Big Ten West. We have the Wisconsin Badgers at 5-2 versus the Northwestern Wildcats at 4-3. The Badgers favored by 6. I have them winning, covering, and over on the 50.5. Next, we have the 6-1 Iowa Hawkeyes versus the 5-2 Penn State Nittany Lions. The Nittany Lions are favored by 5.5 at home. I'm giving that 5.5 to the Hawkeyes. I have the Hawkeyes going on the road into Penn State, winning, covering. And I have Iowa winning. I'm giving them the 5.5. I have Penn State covering the 5.5. I think it'll be like a field goal game. And I'm taking over on the 54. Next, we have the 4-3 Baylor Bears versus the 5-1 West Virginia Mountaineers. So there's 3 teams with 1 loss at the top of the Big 12: West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Texas. So these next 3 games here are very important to whoever is going to be the final 2 standing for the Big 12 championship. West Virginia is favored by 2 touchdowns at home. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 64. Next, we have the 6-1 Texas Longhorns versus the 4-3 Oklahoma State Cowboys. The Longhorns favored by a field goal on the road. Excuse me. Longhorns favored by that field goal. I had them winning, covering, and under on the 59.5. Next, we have the Kansas State Wildcats at 3-4 versus the Oklahoma Sooners at 6-1. Sooners are favored by 23.5. I had them winning, covering, and over on the 64. Now, next we have the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs at 5-2 versus the Florida Atlantic Owls at 3-4. The Owls are favored by 3.5 at home. I'm giving that 3.5 to the Bulldogs. I got the Bulldogs winning, covering, and over on the 58. Next, we have the 1-7 Rice Owls versus the 6-2 North Texas Mean Green. Mean Green favored by 28 on the road. I got them, or home, excuse me. Mean Green favored by 28 on home. I have the winning, covering, and over on the 54. Next, we have the University of UAB. Blazers 6-1 versus the UTEP Miners 0-7. The University of Alabama at Birmingham Blazers versus the 0-7 UTEP Miners. The Blazers are favored by 17 at home. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 48. Next with the Army West Point Black Knights at 5-2 versus the 4-4 East Michigan Eagles. The East Michigan Eagles are favored by 1.5 at home. I'm giving the 1.5 to Army. I got Army winning, covering, and over on the 48. Next, battle of the 4-3 teams. We got the Northern Illinois Huskies versus the BYU Cougars. Cougars are favored by 7.5 at home. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 44.5. Next, we have the 3-4 Toledo Rockets versus the 6-2 Western Michigan Broncos. Broncos are favored by 6. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 66. Next, we have the Ball State Cardinals at 3-5 versus the Ohio Bobcats at 4-3. The Bobcats are favored over the Cardinals by 10. I think a cat catches a Cardinal. I got the Bobcats winning, covering the 10, and over on the 62. Next, with the New Mexico Lobos at 3-4 versus the Utah State Aggies at 6-1. Aggies are favored by 21.5. I do have the Lobos covering the 21.5. The Aggies still winning, and over on the 63.5. Next, we have the 5-2 Boise St Broncos versus the 3-4 Air Force Falcons. Broncos favored by 10. Get them winning, covering, under on the 58. Next, we have the San Diego State Aztecs at 6-1 versus the Nevada Wolfpack at 4-4. San Diego State favored by 2.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 47.5. And next, we have the Hawaii Red Rainbow Warriors 6-3 versus the 6-1 Fresno State Bulldogs. Fresno State favored by 24. I do have Fresno winning. I have Hawaii covering the 24. Okay, that's a pretty big number. And then I have over on the 55.5. So Bulldogs winning. Hawaii covers the 24. Over on the 55.5. Next, we have the 4-3 USC Trojans hosting the Arizona State Sun Devils 3-4. USC is favored by 6.5 at home. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 54.5. Next, we have the 6-2 Washington Huskies going on the road to California Golden Bears at 4-3. Washington favored by 10.5. I have the Huskies winning. I have the Golden Bears covering the 10.5, and then I'm picking over on the 45. Next, it'll be Washington State Cougars at 6-1 versus a 5-2 Stanford Cardinal. Stanford favored by 3 at home. I'm giving the 3 to Washington State. I got the Cougars winning, covering, and under on the 55. Next, we have the battle of the SEC East. 2 and 3 teams. We have the both 6-1. The Florida Gators at 6-1. Georgia Bulldogs at 6-1. They're both trailing the Kentucky Wildcats, who are also 6-1. Georgia is favored by 7 at home. I have Georgia winning. I have Florida covering the 7, and I'm taking over on the 51.5. Excuse me. Next, we have another 5-2 team out of the ACC. We have the SEC. Excuse me. We have Texas A&M Aggies at 5-2 versus the 4-3 Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Bulldogs favored by 2.5. I'm giving the 2.5 to the Aggies. I got the Aggies winning, covering, and over on the 45. Next, we have the aforementioned Kentucky Wildcats 6-1 versus the Missouri Tigers 4-3. Missouri's favored by a touchdown at home. Missouri's only one person. Drew Lock has only beat like 1, maybe 2 ranked quarterbacks in his tenure as quarterback of our teams. So yeah, Drew Lock's going to be like 2 ranked opponents during this reign as quarterback of the Mizzou Tigers. But yeah, I think the Wildcats are a little bit better than the Tigers are. So I'm giving the 7 to the Wildcats. Kentucky wins. They cover over on the 54.5. Next, we have the Troy Trojans at 5-2 versus the South Alabama Jags at 2-5. Trojans favored by 12.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 55.5. Now we have a battle out of the Sun Belt East. Appalachian State Mountaineers at 5-1 versus the Georgia Southern Eagles at 6-1. Mountaineers are favored by 8. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 45.5. Next, we have the Arkansas State Red Wolves at 4-3 versus the Louisiana Raging Cajuns at 3-4. Red Wolves favored by 3.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 65.5. So as we are in week 9 here, we start looking toward the playoffs. What's the committee going to do? Where's everybody going to fall at? If you look at the Football Power Index of just the teams that are either one-loss or undefeated, we have 17 teams that fit into that category right now. 17th, we have the South Florida Bulls. They're 7-0. They're minus 1.2 FPI. This is ESPN's Football Power Index. And then next, we have the UCF at 7-0. They have 9.5 FPI. Next is the NC State Wolfpack, 5-1 with a 9.7. Followed by Kentucky at 6-1 with a 10.4. Washington State 6-1 with 11.3. Texas 6-1 with a 12.9. West Virginia 5-1 with a 13.1. Iowa is 6-1 with a 15.5. Florida is 6-1 with a 16.7 FPI. LSU is 7-1 with a 17 FPI. Now, in week 10, we have Alabama going in to Death Valley on a Saturday night. We all know how good LSU is at home at night, how good they are. You're going to hear it right here first. In week 10, I am picking the LSU Tigers to upset the Alabama Crimson Tide. Next, we have Notre Dame 7-0 with an 18.1 FBI. Then Ohio State at 7-1 and 21.3. And then we have Oklahoma 6-1 with a 22.2. Now the top 4 FPI teams undefeated with 1 loss. Number 4, 7-1 Michigan Wolverines 22.9. Number 3 at 6-1 the Georgia Bulldogs 23.8. And number 2 the Clemson Tigers 7-0 26.9. Obviously number 1 the Alabama Crimson Tide 8-0 at 30.4 FPI. In my mind, you have this many teams with either 1 loss or 0. I don't care how good your second loss is. If you have 2 losses, you shouldn't even be talked about for the playoffs. With this many teams with 1 loss or 0 losses. Just my opinion. And if we're talking about Notre Dame making the playoffs, and they're not in a Power 5 conference, we need to talk about Central Florida and South Florida. Both are undefeated. And they're in a non-Power 5 conference, just like Notre Dame. Alright, so that's going to wrap up week number 9 of the NCAA college football season. As always, thanks for watching the Robert Sports Show. And just remember, no matter what your team does this weekend, college or pro, there's always life beyond sports. As you all know, if you watch Robert Sports Show, I'm an avid pro wrestling fan. I seen on social media last night, and it was announced on WWE Monday Night Raw that their current champion, Roman Reigns, will be relinquishing the title and walking away from professional wrestling due to the emergence of his leukemia. He said he's had it for 11 years. It was in remission and is now back. Life is more important than sports. We need to celebrate life through sports. So no matter what your favorite team does this weekend, just remember something could happen to that. Just no matter what your favorite athlete does, something could happen. Not that I'm a Wolverines fan at all. If you've watched Robert's Sports Show and any of my WWE videos, you know I'm not a Roman Reigns fan. But I took the moment to watch that segment and to just kind of reflect on what he's saying and not realize the difference between storyline and real and what sports does for us versus what real life does for us. Alright, so that wraps up NCAA Week 9. Hopefully your favorite team wins this weekend. As always, thanks for watching the Robert Sports Show, and don't just have a great day. Have a spiffy day. Robert Sports Show, your YouTube leader in sports channel content.